From the moment Vicki Lawrence first stepped onto the Carol Burnett show set in 1967, she carried with her a quiet confidence that belied her status as the show's newest cast member. In rehearsal halls crowded with established stars and veteran writers, she learned to trust her instincts, drawing on her natural timing and rich, expressive voice to craft characters that quickly became audience favorites. Yet behind the bright studio lights and the thunderous laughter of live audiences, a different story unfolded, one in which Vicki was treated as both indispensable and expendable, celebrated in front of the camera, but sidelined the moment the taping wrapped. It began with the simplest of oversights, her name on the call sheet. While Carol Burnett, Harvey Korman, and Tim Conway appeared at the top, Vicki's listing sat several lines down, beneath recurring guest stars and even some of the show's technical crew. When she pointed this out to her agent, she was assured it was clerical, soon to be corrected. But week after week, the same misordering reappeared, as though her rising popularity on air had failed to register in production meetings. Even more frustrating was the casual way the show's producers brushed it off when she brought it up. "Don't worry, honey, you'll get there." Similarly, the green room seating painted a vivid picture of her backstage ranking. While Carol enjoyed a plush velvet chaise, Vicki found herself relegated to an upholstered dining chair flanked by the catering table and a pile of camera cables. Whenever surprise guests needed a place to rest between sketches, Steve Lawrence, Lorne Greene, even Lucille Ball, they claimed her spot first, leaving Vicki to settle for a folding chair in a dim corner. It was a small indignity, but in those quiet moments before going live, it spoke volumes about how the network truly valued her presence. Her predicament extended into wardrobe, where character costumes and on-camera outfits fell under the generous control of the show's costume department. Carol Burnett received custom gowns loaned by top designers, complete with fitters who attended to every hem and sparkle. Harvey Korman and Tim Conway benefited from tailored suits and fresh wardrobe budgets. Vicki, by contrast, often inherited cast-offs or off-the-rack costumes donated by local thrift shops. When she protested the uneven treatment, a young costume assistant quietly confided that network memos dictated lower spending on her character, Mama, because she's supposed to look plain. Lighting offered another striking example. In group-tight shots, Carol's face was bathed in a warm glow, while Vicki's features often receded in subtle shadow, even when they stood shoulder to shoulder. During a dress rehearsal for a Season 3 sketch, Vicki noticed technicians swapping out her 3 soft lights for a single spotlight rigged for wide shots. When she asked the gaffer, he shrugged and muttered, "That's just the way they want it." Over time, she learned to angle her body to catch the bulbs, lifting her chin and squinting slightly to appear brighter on camera. The audience never saw these adjustments, but Vicki felt every unlit second keenly. Pay disparities compounded these creative slights. After her breakout turn as Mama on the Carol Plus 4 Girls sketch, Vicki's salary increased from $25 to $250 per episode. Impressive on paper, but still a fraction of her co-star's earnings. Behind closed doors, network executives explained that her contract limited her bonus pool and profit participation. When she inquired about syndication earnings, her questions were met with vague assurances. "You're a valued member of the ensemble." Yet she watched as guest stars and supporting actors received heavy back-end deals, even for roles that aired only once. Despite the uphill battle for equitable treatment, Vicki never lost her trademark grace and humor. She channeled frustration into performance, sharpening Mama's wit until audiences roared at every growl and eye roll. Producers noticed the ratings spike, but hesitated to acknowledge the star behind the character. During Season 5, Vicki received her first Emmy nomination, a moment that should have triggered a network celebration. Instead, she arrived on award night to find no CBS press release, no congratulatory memo, and no acknowledgement in Variety's official preview. Carol and the rest of the cast were faded in glossy profiles. Vicki's nomination went unmentioned. At a time when women on television struggled for substantive roles, Vicki's talent broke through countless barriers. Yet the same network that profited from her performances resisted granting her equal respect. Each slight, whether in lighting, wardrobe, pay, or publicity, felt like a reminder that she remained the girl in Carol's show. And yet, Those very challenges forged her resilience. Rather than retreat in shame or anger, Vicki used every backstage inequity as fuel, honing her comedic instincts, investing in her own writing, and cultivating a loyal fan base that sent letters praising her authenticity and tenacity. By the time Mama's catchphrases, "Oh, huh," and "Oh, so true," became household sayings, Vicki Lawrence stood at a crossroads. Would she continue to play second fiddle behind the scenes, or seize control of her destiny? As whispers of a Mama's Family spin-off began, she made a bold choice to demand ownership of her character and creative input in scripts, costuming, and promotion. What followed would reshape her career and outlast any backstage slight. But first, she had to confront the very system that had raised her to stardom while keeping her in the shadows. The pattern of second-class treatment extended into every corner of Vicki's professional life, from contract renewals down to where her name appeared in theater marquees. When her Carol Burnett show contract came up for renegotiation in 1971, she arrived at the CBS offices optimistic, armed with ratings reports showing how Mama sketches consistently drew the biggest live audiences. Instead of a celebration, she was handed a non-negotiable form letter extending her agreement under the same terms. No salary bump, no bonus pool increase, and absolutely no profit participation. She pressed her agent for an explanation and was told flatly, "CBS believes your current package is fair for a supporting player." She left the meeting stunned, wondering how a supporting player could generate more fan mail than 3/4 of the cast combined. Around the same time, Vicki learned of a contract clause she'd never noticed before, a morale provision, allowing CBS to film impromptu behind-the-scenes vignettes of the cast for promotional reels. In theory, this was good publicity. In practice, only Carol, Harvey, and Tim were tapped. Vicki's playful off-air bloopers never made the cut. When she asked why, a publicist told her, "We only use clips that reinforce our marquee talent." She realized she was interchangeable. The only Mama the network cared to reference was the fictional character, not the performer who'd breathed life into her. That illusion shattered during an interview for TV Guide. The journalist arrived expecting a joint piece on Carol and her ensemble, but decided to focus solely on Carol's early career inspirations. When the feature went to press, the sidebar on Vicki spanned 3 sentences, framing her as a talented newcomer under Ms. Burnett's wing. Vicki read the article in disbelief. Behind her 3-page spread, Carol's photo bore a salutation, reading CBS's crown jewel. In that moment, Vicki realized that as long as she remained under Carol's umbrella, she'd never get full ownership of her own success. The tipping point came during the 1974 Emmy Awards. Vicki's 3rd nomination arrived with a flurry of excitement. It was her first solo nod, recognizing her for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. That night, she arrived at the Beverly Hilton in a custom teal gown she had painstakingly designed with her mother. She sat in the front row beside the other nominees, her heart pounding with the hope that this time, her talent would be honored in full view. When the winner was announced, Harvey Korman, Vicki applauded graciously, but backstage, her dress was nowhere to be found. Security had mistaken it for a garment bag and sent it to dry cleaners. She had to borrow a plain black wrap dress for the after-party, where she overheard guests asking, "Who is that underdressed lady with Carol Burnett?" She laughed it off, but the sting lingered long after the event. Fed up with being an afterthought, Vicki called Carol directly. She expected mentorship or solidarity, but Carol's response was measured. "Honey, I wish I could change their minds, but this is showbiz. You'll get your chance when you spin off on your own." It wasn't the encouragement Vicki sought, but it planted an idea. If CBS refused to recognize her worth, maybe she'd have to claim it herself. She hired a small legal team to investigate the rights to the Mama character and discovered that CBS had assumed full ownership by trivial contract wording. Dissatisfied, she began drafting her own clauses, proposals to secure creative approval, profit participation, and final say over how Mama was portrayed in any spin-off. Behind the scenes, the network noticed a shift. Vicki's fan mail grew more insistent, demanding equal billing, better lighting, and more prominent credits. Talent scouts whispered that she was a rising star on her own merit, with the power to walk away. CBS executives convened an emergency meeting, They couldn't risk losing their breakout performer, yet balked at meeting her demands. After tense negotiations, Vicki agreed to star in Mama's Family, but only as a producer with script approval and billing at the top of the credits. When she presented this ultimatum, the silence in the room made her pulse thunder. Then, one by one, hands raised in concession. Her victory felt monumental. For the first Mama's Family table read, Vicki sat at the head of the writer's room table, microphone turned on. As scene by scene, she shaped Mama's voice. She worked alongside a costume designer cleared to spend on authentic frocks, and a cinematographer who adjusted lights to flatter her expressions, not mask them. Her contract granted her 50% of syndication profits and a guaranteed spot on the Emmy ballot every year. When filming began, the green room had plush seating equal to Carol's former chaise, an unspoken acknowledgement that hosting her own show meant owning her presence entirely. And yet, Vicki never forgot those early slights. She used her newfound authority to advocate for guest performers, ensuring that no cast member on her set endured the invisibility she had known. She launched a Fair Bulbs initiative, personally funding updated lighting for actors on low-budget productions. She established profit-sharing models for supporting cast and crew, and credited every single name on screen, down to the PA who fetched coffee. Those choices rewrote the rules for women in comedy, proving that visibility wasn't just a perk, but a right. In reclaiming her story, Vicki Lawrence transformed backstage inequality into an engine of empowerment for herself and for every performer who followed. When Mama's Family premiered in 1983, it felt like Vicki Lawrence had stepped out of Carol Burnett's long shadow and onto a stage of her own making. The pilot episode opened with Mama's familiar scowl, but freshly lit under soft, flattering lights that Vicki had personally approved. Ratings soared on opening night, proving that audiences were eager to follow her cranky matriarch into new adventures. Behind the camera, Vicki sat at a production desk alongside writers and directors, suggesting scene changes and approving costume sketches. She watched the monitors as her co-stars delivered lines she'd fine-tuned, and she felt the thrill of ownership sweep through her. This was her creation, shaped by battles won in CBS boardrooms and lit by her own choices. From the very first table read, Vicki insisted on fairness. She added a clause guaranteeing equal rehearsal time for all principal actors and reserved veto power over any scene that treated her ensemble unfairly. She remembered how guest stars once elbowed her aside, so now she allocated spotlight moments evenly, crafting subplots that allowed younger cast members to shine. During one three-camera rehearsal, she noticed the camera operators lingering too long on a single supporting actor. She paused the action, walked over, and suggested a balanced rotation of close-ups. The shift was subtle on screen but seismic behind the scenes. It let every performer know their work mattered as much as hers. Crew morale soared under Vicki's watch. She negotiated with the lighting department to upgrade fixtures, ensuring small technical roles received the same quality equipment once reserved for marquee talent. Grip and electric crews were included in wrap party celebrations. Wardrobe assistants were credited not as extras, but by name in the closing sequence. When laughter peaked in final takes, she invited makeup artists into the applause line, acknowledging that their lamps and brushes shaped how characters appeared to the world. That culture of respect echoed in the laughter track. Viewers sensed a warmth and authenticity that only genuine camaraderie could produce. Yet power came with fresh battles. CBS executives pressed for tighter budgets in Season 2, suggesting multi-purpose sets and trimmed shooting days. Vicki pushed back, arguing that cutting corners on production quality would undermine the show's core appeal. She threatened to take her show elsewhere, referencing interest from syndication networks. Negotiations dragged on for weeks, during which she and her writing team rehearsed with paper props to prove that improvisation couldn't replace real resources. In the end, CBS relented, approving the full season order and even greenlighting a new guest wing. That victory cemented her reputation as a force who could both entertain and negotiate at the highest level. As Mama's Family evolved, Vicki used her platform to explore deeper themes. In episode arcs she co-wrote, Mama grappled with everything from small-town politics to changing gender roles, a nod to Vicki's own journey of fighting for respect. One standout episode confronted workplace harassment. with Mama rallying local women to stand up for fair treatment. Vicki infused the storyline with personal insight, recalling her own battles over equal pay and recognition. Critics praised the blend of humor and heart, and viewers applauded the relatability of a character fighting for dignity in every aspect of life. Awards began to follow. In 1985, Mama's Family earned an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Comedy Series, an honor Vicki shared as both lead actress and executive producer. At the ceremony, she wore a gown handpicked to reflect her dual role, part elegant starlet, part savvy businesswoman. She accepted her nomination speech by thanking every crew member by name, from script supervisor to set decorator, turning the spotlight outward to recognize those who'd once been ignored. In interviews afterward, journalists noted that her sincerity felt revolutionary, marking a departure from ego-driven speeches toward collective gratitude. By season 6, the show was a syndication powerhouse. Vicki negotiated a back-end deal that placed her among the top earners on television, a stark contrast to her early years of capped bonuses. She used those earnings to establish a scholarship for minority writers and technicians, remembering how she once fought just to be seen. Every year, scholarship recipients visited the set, greeted by Vicki in makeup chairs equal in brightness to any stars. Those young creatives went on to staff other hit shows, carrying forward her ethos of inclusivity and respect. Despite triumphs, Vicki never forgot the sting of second-class treatment. She still recalled the single-bulb dressing room and the unpaid overtime on Carol Burnett's show. When asked what advice she'd give to newcomers, she said, "Demand to be valued from day one. Fight for your worth, but remember to pull others up behind you." As Mama's Family wrapped its final season, she organized a farewell banquet where every crew member received a personalized gift, an engraved wrench, a signed script, a spotlight framed with their name. It was her closing act, a reminder that she had turned every backstage slight into a spotlight on collective success. When Mama's Family ended, many assumed Vicki Lawrence would fade back into ensemble life. Yet she used that moment to launch an even more daring chapter. In 1993, she debuted The Vicki Lawrence Show, a daytime talk series that bore her name above the marquee for the first time. Overnight, she faced a new battleground, behind-the-scenes skepticism that a comedian best known for a dowdy Southern matriarch could carry her own chat program. Network memos circulated warning that her fan base might not tune in for serious topics, and early focus groups balked at seeing Mama trade one-liners for panel discussions. But Vicki was undeterred. She insisted on a set that reflected her vision: warm wood tones, comfortable sofas, and lighting designed to flatter every guest, not just marquee names. In her first week on air, she championed a domestic violence survivor whose story resonated with viewers far beyond sitcom nostalgia. Ratings spiked when Vicki combined heartfelt empathy with humor, her genuine laugh breaking tension when guests hesitated to open up. Yet backstage, producers debated whether her style was too informal for daytime. Vicki pushed back, threatening to walk if the network silenced her voice. They relented, and that decision became the lifeblood of her show: authenticity over artifice. Behind closed doors, the writing team often struggled with balancing topical depth and lighthearted segments. Vicki personally reviewed every script, cutting tired cliches and demanding story-driven questions. She hired a researcher to fact-check guests' claims, insisting on journalistic integrity seldom found on syndicated talk shows. Technicians who once treated her as just Mama now heard her voice echo through control rooms, guiding camera movements and approving segment edits. The shift unsettled some longtime staffers but inspired others to elevate their work, proof that her early battles for respect had prepared her to lead in uncharted creative waters. One memorable episode featured the original Carol Burnett show cast reunited on Vicki's set. Backstage tensions flared when CBS executives tried to limit the reunion to a brief clip package. Vicki stood her ground, arguing that viewers deserved an uncut hour with their favorite stars. When she threatened to cancel the segment entirely, production tables turned. Carol, Harvey, and Tim insisted on staying for a full interview, praising Vicki's leadership as the reason they agreed to appear. The reunion aired to record numbers, cementing Vicki's authority as a host who honored the past while shaping her own legacy. Even as her talk show flourished, Vicki never abandoned the stage. She starred in Broadway revivals, headlining a 1995 production of Hello, Dolly, that critics called a masterclass in comedic timing. Backstage anecdotes tell of costume fittings where Vicki found herself seated under a lone fluorescent fixture, a ghost of Mama's old slights. But this time she laughed. She'd already burned her own light board, investing in custom rigs that followed her entrance, an industry insider secret she shared with up-and-coming performers. Her Dolly wore sequins that caught every angle, proof that she had learned the value of visibility from her earliest TV struggles. By the 2000s, Vicki's influence extended to primetime variety specials. She produced and hosted a 2002 comedy gala that raised millions for breast cancer research, bringing together legends and newcomers under equitable lighting and contractual terms she'd fought to establish. Behind the scenes, she made it a requirement that female writers receive equal pay and that half the guest lineup be women. Crew members recall her proudly announcing, "If Mama's family can't be balanced, no one's balancing." The gala's success led networks to re-examine long-standing inequities in variety programming, crediting Vicki's template for more inclusive deals. In 2005, she returned to television drama with a recurring role on an acclaimed medical series. When producers initially offered her a minor part, Vicki leveraged her talk show ratings to negotiate a multi-episode arc with character development and name billing. She insisted on script approval and fair compensation for her performance and residuals. The show became a critical darling, and reviewers lauded her transition from comedian to dramatic actress. In acceptance speeches for awards, Vicki highlighted the importance of recognizing performers for their full range of talents, not confining them to one genre. Through every pivot, from sitcom star to talk show host, Broadway lead to dramatic actress, Vicki Lawrence carried lessons from those early CBS days. Demand fair treatment, advocate for others, and never let your light be reduced to shadows. In interviews, she often recounts slipping into that lone dressing room bulb and resolving that no director would ever dim her again. Today, she mentors a new generation of performers through workshops on negotiation and self-advocacy. She tells them, "The hardest battles are fought behind the scenes, but they shape every moment you step into view." By the time Vicki Lawrence celebrated her 50th anniversary in show business, the backstage battles she once fought had become the foundation for a second career: advocate, mentor, and industry reformer. In 2010, she founded the Center for Performer Advocacy, a nonprofit dedicated to negotiating fair contracts for underrepresented artists and technical crew. The center quickly became a resource hub: sample contract templates, step-by-step negotiation guides, and a helpline staffed by volunteer entertainment lawyers. Workshops in Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago drew hundreds of participants eager to learn how to secure pay equity, equitable billing, and on-screen credits that truly reflected their contributions. Vicki often kicked off sessions with a personal anecdote about the single-bulb dressing room or the off-the-rack frocks she'd endured, reminding newcomers that they need not accept invisibility as part of the job. That same year, she launched a scholarship fund under her name for women pursuing degrees in film production, writing, and technical trades. By partnering with universities across the country, the Vicki Lawrence Scholarship awarded annual grants to students who demonstrated both creative talent and a commitment to inclusive storytelling. Recipients attended summer intensives at her home studio, shadowing directors, costume designers, and lighting technicians as they rotated through departments. Vicki personally reviewed each application, writing notes of encouragement on acceptance letters, and often inviting scholars back for internships. The program now boasts more than 100 alums working behind the scenes of primetime shows, big-budget films, and digital platforms, and most attribute their early success to the confidence and connections they gained through Vicki's mentorship. In 2012, Vicki partnered with a team of psychologists to author The Performing Artist's Guide to Boundaries and Well-Being, a handbook addressing mental health, burnout prevention, and the importance of saying no when creative integrity or personal safety is at stake. The book combined interview excerpts from performers across genres, musical theater stars, stand-up comics, stunt coordinators, with practical exercises for self-advocacy. It became required reading in conservatory programs and was translated into multiple languages. Readers praised its honest portrayal of the emotional toll of performing and the strategies for reclaiming agency. Vicki dedicated her royalties to establishing a 24-hour counseling hotline for industry professionals, ensuring that help was available around the clock for those facing harassment, discrimination, or the stress of demanding schedules. Her own artistic output continued to flourish alongside her advocacy. In 2015, she reunited with Carol Burnett for a televised variety special called Burnett and Lawrence, Two Arsenic and Old Lace, where the duo performed sketches underscoring the importance of female collaboration. Behind the scenes, Vicki insisted on equal pay for all featured performers and negotiated a collective bonus pool shared by the entire ensemble, crew included. The special won an Emmy for Outstanding Variety Special and was hailed as a model of inclusive production. Critics noted the seamless balance of humor and heartfelt messaging, but for Vicki, the real victory was demonstrating that generosity behind the camera yielded stronger performances in front of it. In recognition of her lifelong commitment to fairness, Vicki received the Television Academy's Governor's Award in 2017. Her acceptance speech brought hundreds of crew members to their feet in applause as she called for continued vigilance. "We've come a long way, but our work is unfinished. Every artist deserves respect and opportunity, by right, not request." Shortly afterward, she launched an annual Vicki Lawrence Symposium that convened union leaders, network executives, and freelancers to draft best practices guidelines on pay transparency, safety protocols, and crediting conventions. The guidelines were adopted by several major studios and streaming platforms, setting new industry standards that ripple through current contracts. Her influence also spread internationally. In 2018, Vicki was invited to host a panel at the Cannes Film Festival on women in comedy, sharing the stage with directors, writers, and international performers. She spoke candidly about the disparities she had faced, drawing parallels between Hollywood and global markets where female comedians are often relegated to supporting roles. Her frank advocacy prompted several European networks to launch funding programs for women's comedy series, and a Japanese broadcaster credited Vicki's remarks with inspiring its first all-female sketch show. Across 5 continents, her voice resonated as a beacon for talent too often overlooked. Today, Vicki Lawrence divides her time between creative projects and her advocacy work. She still writes and produces new comedy specials that feature diverse casts and equitable billing. She guest lectures at universities, reminding students that equity is not charity, it is justice. And she continues to mentor individual artists, celebrating their victories as proudly as her own. Reflecting on a career that began under harsh studio lights and modest means, Vicki sees the through line clearly. Each challenge behind the scenes became an opportunity to rewrite the rules. What really happened in those early years was not just unequal treatment, but the forging of an unbreakable resolve, a resolve that today lifts up thousands who follow in her footsteps. In the years since the Center for Performer Advocacy first opened its doors, Vicki Lawrence has watched countless artists transform their careers through the very tools she once lacked. She still remembers her early days on The Carol Burnett Show, squinting under that single green room bulb, and she measures every victory against the shadows she once endured. Now, when she receives letters from young performers celebrating their first negotiated billing or sharing stories of managers who finally listened to their safety concerns, she feels the full circle of a journey that began with a simple demand: to be treated as an equal. On her 75th birthday, Vicki returned to CBS Studios, not as a guest star, but as an honoree for their newly established Equity in Entertainment Award. The ceremony was held on the very stage where Mama first cracked her whip, and behind the velvet curtain, she paused to take in the rows of seats, remembering how unfamiliar they once felt. As she walked on stage adorned in a sequined jacket that caught every spotlight, she spotted the legacy of her battles reflected in the eyes of today's rising stars seated in the front rows. They were young writers, camera operators, costume designers, artists she had helped lift into the light. When her name was called, the applause rolled over her like a wave of affirmation she had longed for all those decades ago. Yet even in the midst of celebration, Vicki's mind flickered back to quieter rooms. The CBS contract negotiations with stone-faced executives, the whispered admonitions to stay in her lane, the scripted assurances that the network valued her contributions, while actions spoke otherwise. Those memories, she realized, were not scars to be hidden, but lessons to be shared. So in her acceptance speech, she delivered a challenge rather than a retrospective gratitude. If you see a light left dim, turn it on. If you spot a contract left unsigned by fairness, demand it be rewritten. The true measure of progress isn't in our own applause, but in the voices we lift beside us. Her words punctuated the applause with a call to action that resonated far beyond the ceremony. In the months that followed, the Center for Performer Advocacy expanded its reach into new realms. Digital content creators seeking equitable revenue shares, virtual reality technicians navigating labor protections in emerging studios, stand-up comedians negotiating fair camera cuts on streaming specials. Vicki recruited a team of volunteer ambassadors, alumni from her scholarship program who had become producers, directors, and showrunners themselves. These ambassadors led workshops in cities as diverse as Lagos, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo, translating her negotiation templates into multiple languages and cultural contexts. The network of support became a global tapestry, proving that the fight for fairness transcends genres and geographies. At home, Vicki's personal archives grew richer with artifacts from her own career, handwritten notes from early The Carol Burnett Show rehearsals, even the original 3-inch reel of her first lighting adjustment. She transformed a corner of her studio into a small museum open to students and scholars by appointment, hoping that seeing those tangible relics would inspire empathy and determination in visitors. She installed interactive kiosks that contrasted her old call sheets with the contracts she now drafted for others, illustrating the tangible differences a signature clause could make. More than nostalgia, the exhibit served as a practical classroom. Here is the past. Here is the blueprint for the future. As streaming platforms and independent productions continue to rise, Vicki keeps a vigilant eye on new trends. Creators worried about revenue transparency, performers uncertain about safety protocols on remote shoots, writers navigating pay-per-view models. She commissions ongoing research into fair crediting practices for algorithms and artificial intelligence, ensuring that digital assistants or deepfake voices cannot steal recognition from living artists. Her forward-thinking stance draws praise from technology journals as well as entertainment outlets, uniting fields that rarely converse. In her mind, the most important legacy is one of adaptability, transforming lessons learned under fluorescent bulbs into guidelines that withstand every new medium. When asked about her own creative projects these days, Vicki laughs and says she's just getting started. She's developing a podcast series interviewing trailblazing performers from around the globe about the moments they first refused to accept good enough. She's drafting a sitcom pilot set in a community theater, exploring themes of access and inclusion through laugh-out-loud sketches. And she continues to pen personal essays for industry magazines, reminding readers that each generation must fight its own battles, but need never fight alone. In quiet moments, Vicki reflects on a career that once felt defined by what she lacked: equal pay, proper lighting, peer recognition, and now stands illuminated by what she built. The young actress who once waited for a technician to turn on her bulb has become a beacon for thousands navigating their own backstage struggles. And while the world may remember Mama's wry one-liners or Vicki's easy laugh, her true legacy lies in the countless artists who found their voices, secured their rightful credits, and walked into that spotlight with confidence they once thought impossible. As she passes the torch to a new cohort of performers and technicians, Vicki Lawrence knows that her work will never truly be finished. But she rests easy knowing that every contract clause, every scholarship awarded, every boundary asserted, has made the path a little brighter for those who follow. In the end, what really happened behind the scenes wasn't just a tale of unequal treatment. It was the forge that molded a resolute spirit, and that spirit now shines forward into every stage, studio, and screen where artists strive to be seen.